Thank you, Esa. Hello, everyone. Are you still up for one more keynote? I know I'm the last in the series. Thanks. Maybe you'll just get up and shake it a bit, because I know sitting for a long time, maybe we get more focused. Good. Thank you. Yeah, I think I was at lunch. I was saying to Esa, like, okay, so everything has been said already, so I'm just going to repeat it. But my point of view is actually quite different in a way, because now we're going to dive into the employee experience. So these people who are supposed to make this change happen, about the journeys and about insights and whatever were heard. Here's the clicker. Down. Thank you. This is me. So for 4 years now, I've led design operations at H&M. I joined as the first design ops manager, a team of one, and then have matured and scaled the practice. Here's a bit more about myself and why, or something I would like to pinpoint is the Design Ops Assembly Sweden co-lead. In this community, I've met a lot of leaders just like me who are in other Swedish or Nordic companies driving ops functions. And sort of the learnings that we're going to go through are global. It's the things that we are all talking about in this community. So it's not specific to especially me, although my maybe examples are from H&M. And of course, the slide deck is easiest to do to the H&M template, I mean. Good. Another thing maybe good to know, I have a really long background in agencies, working as a consultant, and H&M is my first sort of in-house enterprise scale experience. I worked with in-house before, but mostly with scale-up and startups. Yes, so lessons from design ops on driving customer-centric change in large organizations. Maybe why I think that this is relevant in this context has to do with the word ops. So I think we've talked today a lot about architecture and orchestration and different words for the same lovely thing. But for me, it's really ops. Like this has been design ops, journey ops, it's another type of ops. So I'm trying to sort of shed light to the ops. And we all operate in the CX sphere. And something that I actually really hear in this when I'm listening to all of these you marvelous people talking, is that I sense it. There's lots of service designers in the room. Just yesterday, I was talking with another bunch of people. There were lots of people that were customer success managers, customer care, customer service, marketing. And they're all part of this also, but from a different angle. And they do talk about it quite differently. But anyway, I stepped into my role 4 years ago with the strong background in agencies. And I guess there's lots of people here who have experience of doing PowerPoints, making things sound nice. You do a lot of work. You explore, you interview, you research, you surface opportunity areas, then you come up with strategies to enable this and that, and then all that's left is action. And I really thought that was the easy part, handing it over to the client and here you have the roadmap to success, basically. Oh God, I was so wrong. Yeah, so implementation is not the easy part, and that's because it has everything to do with change, which we already have established. But here is a little bit of how it can feel like and look like establishing and running an operational function. Looks very nice in theory on the PowerPoints, everything's gonna work smooth. And then you come to the reality of it, and it's just not that same. It's not super smooth. And then you are running it, and you're like, yeah, okay, I got this. So my first learning, ops, is all about change management. Now, I'm not a change manager. My background is in design. I was a graphic designer from the beginning, and then going to different service design and so on, innovation management. So what exactly is change management? When I stepped into my role, I actually had a speech when I said, design ops is service design. And now 4 years later, design is change management. So let's see what I think in a couple of years. But it's a little bit different to establish an ops function and then sort of mature it. But why I think design ops and journey ops both are automatically about change is one thing is this. The ratios are never on our side if we are designers. Now, this is something that ChatGPT gave me back in May. If you look at the sort of standard enterprise scale ratio in product development, so you have 1 designer per 6 to 7 developers per 2 to 3 business people. And this is quite a lot in the sort of maybe product team UX sphere. So if you look at service design, it's even worse. There's less people. So when the ratios are not on our side, we have a lot more people around us that are manifesting their versions of the story and their operating models and how things should go. And they are also listened to just because they are more and many. Like they don't face the same kind of obstacles as we do. So working with this as the starting point by default means change. We need every role to be sort of part of this. And design, because of the underdog position, is often set up to drive change from bottom up. We need to get the people with us, and then we just sort of prove the value, and we prove how this is going to go. But often when you have transformational programs, they are driven in large organizations, both from top down and bottom up, right? But yeah, driving, if you are establishing something that's new, like an ops, that's what I felt like, that the expectation is from bottom up to see that there is value in this. Oh, sorry, wrong way. I was the first one who did that. Another reason why we are working with change is that because we are working with ways of working. Now, someone said in some question here that that's one of the hardest things to change. Yes, I agree. So I think the ops, to me, in journey ops, is exactly the same as in design ops, even though our scopes are different. It's systematic, intentional orchestration and advocacy for customer-centric ways of working. So when I started, I think in broad terms, my task was to optimize and improve our customer-centric ways of working. So optimize and improve. And as we talked about improving and optimizing these ways of working, I was like, okay, well, what does ways of working actually mean? So then I went on a listening tour and discovered that it meant this, and this, and this, and all of that was ways of working. And it was a lot from like very detailed to very high sort of strategic things. And not only, it's a lot of things here, but the thing that means change here is that I was tasked to improve these things. So by definition, there is something in the organization that is not working. And my job was to surface that. Well, that makes me like a very unpopular person, right? So first, sorry. First, you work with ways of working, hard to change. And the secondly, you work with resistance because you work with ways of working. So in my experience of all these years, I think we highly, highly underestimate, and I have highly underestimated people's emotional attachment to their ways of working, their current ways of doing things. It's very individual. It's hard for any team or a function to own. Like how would you own something like ways of working? But yet that's what teams or individuals are often tasked with. So distilling those lists of what ways of working is, design operations, or if you take the design out, running operations, is about people, practice, and organization, and achieving change in these 3 areas. How do we enable the designers, the craft, and the design organization to deliver with impact? That's the core areas. And then if you look at this in the journey management lens, then you're like, okay, it's not designers, design, and the design organization. That's quite, you can contain it. That's like, okay, well, the designers, the product managers, the customer success people, the service agents, the analysts, the inside people, the researchers, all of their practices, and basically the entire service and product development business. Now that's incredibly big. And I know that there are people in this room that are teams of one that are tasked with that. I also started as a team of one, and I was tasked with a smaller scope. But driving change, we're driving humongous change, and we are all individuals in it. Just acknowledging that. This doesn't really play a role here, but this is how the scope was communicated and still is at H&M with design ops, so that people practice organization can be translated into different kinds of stories, whatever ops you run. And then the third reason for why it's changed is the vision that someone already mentioned here. But to drive the mindset shift in becoming a more customer-centric organization, that's an actual vision that we have written down at H&M, but I know everyone is dealing with this, whether it's written down or not. And the thing here is the mindset shift. So we're working with ways of working, but what we really want to change are the mindsets, because they steer how we behave, what we value, what we prioritize. So it's not only about how we act, but how we think. So how would you change that? So putting all this together, I think that running an ops function is driving customer-centric change within our sphere. The headcounts are not on our side. How can we tip that? How can we make it into our favor? We're improving and optimizing ways of working, and our job is to surface inefficiencies. How do you sort of tackle that you don't become like the least liked person in the room? And then I aim not to only change how we do things, but how do we think about things? So how can we achieve this shift of mindset? That's the big learning of what I'm trying here to do. I'm not really driving the operations. I am driving the change in organization. Second learning. What is ops to begin with? I mean, I also stepped into this role by Googling what's design operations. But so ops is basically, operations and enablement. And they both sound the same, but they are driving two completely different things in an organization. So operations is usually where it starts. You see that, you have a need for something, usually like a process improvement, or maybe like a guidelines or something that's missing, something that needs to be released. And that's also how you kind of structure things. So operations is the side of the coin that gives you a structure and guidelines on how to act, and is aiming to make the things consistent, usable, and scalable. But that's only half of the story. So the dark side of the moon here, which is much less talked about, is the enablement part. Like, how do we actually create trust? How do we lift the capabilities? How do we lift the ability of people to work with the things that are on the operations side? And it has a lot to do on how people feel. It's about making people feel inspired, guided, and confident. And in the middle of this is, who guesses it? Adoption. So how would you actually, you work with something that's theoretical, but it doesn't come into action before adoption. I think this word is probably the most overused when you talk about design systems. But that's the word that I think we in the industry currently use. But that's how it started, and this is how I see it now. So I think enablement really needs to be where you start. And enablement needs to be on the sort of the shiny side of the moon. It's more important since change is about changing people's behavior, and changing process is not enough. success, like when you put enablement in the spotlight, change is not defined by project completion or a launch of something, but by adoption and sustained results, that you actually keep the change on. You lock it into something and you see that it just keeps going on after the launch. Do I have until, like I have 15 more minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Good.
Why?
No. I'm just kind of trying to think what I should skip here since my notes are extensive. Anyway, but when you start from operations, I think we have started with operations many times, and with every single thing when we established ops was about operations. We had something that we needed to release, and then we just worked with it. But it can become easily this like top-down tell mode type of approach that, okay, well, this is how it's supposed to be. We are the know-it-all people, and now you just kind of work with it. And then the sort of receiving end is feeling not very good about it. And an enablement part is much more about the bottom-up collaboration. And I already mentioned it, that design is kind of set up that way. And designers are also, we're familiar with it. So also in the ops part, embracing it actually helps a lot. And of course, as we know, the best ideas usually come from the people who are closest to the problem or closest to working. So start from there. So yeah, I think like when you, I don't know if I would recommend or anything, but like when I started, I think we put on the hat of a strategist. Like, this is what we are supposed to launch now. This is how some process or something would most optimally work. And then we sort of worked towards launching it. And then we talked about activation and then adoption and so on. But then when you start from enablement, you sort of see that things start coming from the organization. So you start meeting with these people and asking what is it that they are currently doing, and go very contextual. Like a great example of this is we worked with customer experience and brand experience, and their sort of what their priorities or what they were working on weren't really aligned. So like, okay, well, something needs to happen. But instead of making like some sort of a complicated process on how it should be orchestrated, we just made a simple cadence of one meeting where these people came together and talked. And from that, they, over time, created a design review format on how to design or how to review design with both brand and CX format, and then also a roadmap that can be included in different workflows for product development. And the person who actually made this happen sits here, Seth. So if you want to talk with him, do that. Maybe I should have changed the slide before. But so we think that change happens when you introduce process, guideline, and templates and guide the work of how it should be done. But really, that's the result of inclusion, alignment, and connection. So inclusion, communication, collaboration, they create alignment and connection, and they are all key elements and key skills in change management. Something we need to understand, that we need to learn. We need to find a way how to learn and how to sort of teach and how to scale and continuously keep practicing. It's not something that you just have a skill to do that or not. And also that the delivery mode is really hard to erase from the mind of an ops practitioner, because that's how we're set up in companies. Like you need to deliver something, so you think a lot about the operations side. So I think it's an active mindset thing that you sort of choose to put enablement first. Yes, and the last point, because when you lean on operations, you are leading change through process management. And now I don't know how many agree with this, but when we are in Sweden, relationships is something that's like in the core of being Sweden and being Swedish or running any company in Sweden. So running change is about relationship management, not about process management. And that's why also enablement should come first. Then there are some pitfalls, of course, also. That's good to think about before jumping on either of the trains, enablement or operations. Who doesn't need enablement? And what should not be operationalized? What doesn't need to be standardized? Or what should be experimental? If you over-standardize things, I think we also compromise innovation. And then in the enablement part, over-enabling can feel very intrusive and really make people passive. I think it's more important to me to guarantee as an ops function that things are done, not so important how they are done. So for example, one key element that I keep referring to is like cadence of things, meetings, rituals where people come together. Just orchestrating those kind of is, well, it's both operations and enablement, but it's aiming for enablement. It's not telling how exactly you should then come together in these ceremonies. Third learning. Best practice doesn't exist. Is there anyone who disagrees with this? Yeah, good. No, I would like to be challenged. I mean, everyone loves best practice, right? Like, well, everything in journey maps, basically, right? Our journey management is best practice. We're looking at how do we do journey maps, and we're looking at all over, say, the same structures over and over again. But then you run into this. How many has heard this, someone say to you this in a meeting? Oh, not that many. Okay, it's more. This is what I kept hearing all the time when something was launched or introduced when going operations first. Okay, closest to the truth is not really like scaling best practice, but integrating successful practice instead. I think my mission when I started was like to just identify and scale different things. That's going operations first, and it does not work. It's also like a misconception that best practice guarantees quality. It can, of course, guarantee quality, but even if it would guarantee quality in theory, the quality outputs as per se qualify. They don't guarantee impact. What creates impact is alignment, that the people who are actually using and operating in these different frameworks are aligned and they are actually thinking the same direction. And that also has a much more to bring people together and just sort it out rather than telling them how they should do it. Ops looks different in all of the organizations. I'm sure it looks very different in all of the journey ops organizations also, because every organization has a different culture. They have different ownership structure, different strategy, different politics. And how does the organization operate is impacting how you should sort of drive change. And you need to understand how to navigate that, how to find the paths of influence. And I find it quite mind-blowing actually now that this is not taught like to people who join organizations in the kind of roles that we have where we are expected to change something. You need to start figuring out. When I first joined H&M, the organizational what is it called? The chart, thank you, was a circle that had circles inside of it that had other circles inside of it, and then they were like overlapping a bit. There were no lines or no dotted lines or anything. And that was just one function where I was sitting. And then the other functions, there wasn't a holistic map of how many even all of the functions are. I think I'm getting a little bit sidetracked here, but this is something that I call organizational literacy that I think is super important and one of the key elements in change management. But yes, going back maybe to my original brief of standardizing the ways of working and trying to aim to common ways of working is something that I don't believe in anymore. I instead of standardizing ways of working, I believe we should align our ways of working, and we should aim for shared ways of working, shared understanding of what and why we're doing, not so much common, like that we say exactly the same. One size does not fit all. And here's just an example of this best practice. This is the design process. These are the 4 variations, starting from nothing, of the industry best practice of design process that we have gone through and sort of curated, made, and launched towards the organization. So we've gone from nothing to squares to circles and then to diamonds. But basically, it's still the same process in one way or another, but it's used differently. I guess last time when we talked, Esa, there were at least 2 organizations that talked about the triple diamond. Now we also have the triple diamond. It's very useful in a context, but in another context, you might use like sort of another visualization. You also see that we have kind of to which brand guidelines we should comply to has also changed 4 times during 4 years. So sorry about that. But anyway, the point is that the visualization has changed according to how it has been used. So we have grown from like a UX organization to a CX organization in these 4 years. Maybe I'll just very quickly. Ops, in our context, we work horizontally and we work holistically, catering to everyone in the organization. So in a matrix organization, operations could work vertically if you'd work with something called program management, and you'd have a bigger organization of ops practitioners. But when you're smaller, you usually work holistic and across. And one of the things to mitigate both the not being perceived as the know-it-all person who comes with like an operational plan of how you should be doing things, and then also to tackle this, my context is different, is to frame everything as an experiment. Everything that you do is an experiment, and you start small in the teams, and then when something starts sort of rolling, you scale it up to a pilot, and then you more define. The experiment is not even defined, maybe, but pilots are more like, okay, so what do we actually need to see after this pilot, and so on. And then I'm going to jump into the last one. Integrate successful practice. This is basically like don't scale, but integrate. And before this talk, Esa, you sent us like a list of things that people wanted to hear. Roadmaps was on it, so I'm just going to give you an example. These are all very old pictures of our roadmap, so nothing sort of super current. But this is how an operations-driven roadmap can look like. This is our first roadmap in Design Ops. It had quarters, so it was time-bound. Like within this time, this is what we are working with, and the horizontals are our pillars. And then it had this line, releases. Okay, so these guidelines are coming then, the playbook is coming then. Used it as a communication tool to sort of let people know what they can expect that is coming out from ops and what we are working towards. Playbook, for example, I wouldn't say that was like one of our most successful initiatives. We still have a playbook, but how much that is used is debatable. So that's an operations-driven initiative. Then from that, we went to a more like a Kanban-based, what we are doing now, then and later. It gives the flexibility to change focus and work more context-based when you were met with this feedback that my context is different, need something else. And then it has a incoming thing for people to sort of collaborate on. And now the latest version is the integrated version, which is in Jira, which can be then, of course, tagged and connected to our design roadmap. So what the designers, not only the enablement our side, but what the designers are doing, and then the product workflows on what they are doing. Yes, and how that goes, left to be seen. Of course, this is also like an example. The big feature is not something we're working on. Anyway, But of course, like this is something that we could have not started here because we weren't sort of mature enough to be there. So just start whatever you think you need at the moment where you are. Another example, I know I have like 5 minutes, right? If you were driving your agenda, like just think, who would you like to be in this picture? I think like the first thing, and then maybe you changed, but probably everyone wants to be the bearded guy because you want to sort of tell the story. But where you often start, you are sort of like a change strategist. You are a little bit outside of the whole organization that are playing their game. And then you're like, okay, well, I need to identify and surface these things, and I need to come up with a strategy on how to change this. Then you start working with something. This is a slide. It's just an example of a career guide that we have also worked on, but think any deliverable. And then you're hoping that as you have sort of put together this and launched it, that the people in the organization would adopt it. But they keep talking about everything else except that asset that you would like them to talk about. Everything else. So then you need to sort of change the role and also your strategy. You need to become the change facilitator. You need to go into the teams and into the areas of like, this is what we have done, and this is why it would be relevant for you, making it contextual again. But that's not also where it ends, because you really want to let go. You want it to become like a centerpiece. Like if this was a storytelling circle, it's the fireplace. It's the thing that draws people to it so they can talk about it and around it. And it just exists in their sort of daily work. And then you become like a coach. You can go like step back and coach and be there for things to happen if needed, but not necessary. And because I have like 1 minute, I still want to say that the absolute best way of gaining adoption at scale is this is why the career framework is here, now I remember, is to tap to central functions. So like HR, TA, communications, the governance and steering office. If you can tap whatever you've made into those, usually the adoption becomes mandatory. So just an example, the career framework that we made was a pilot, but it has now spread to the entire tech organization, to every competence, done in a similar way, describing the same career paths. And one thing that is actually enables us in operations is to get to the skills of not only our competence, but all the other competencies. And I think this is super relevant for Journey Ops, because career frameworks, they describe core skills. And core skills in journey management, they need to be the same skill, like, I don't know, systemic thinking, change management, and so on, for a lot of competencies. How you could sort of start driving something like that is maybe not through operationalizing what we're doing, but in the enablement side of like, how do we make sure that this skill and capability grows in the organization? Then da-da-da, 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 things like that. And then I will end up with this lovely quote, completely out of owning anything. This is after the last meetup. Esa said this to me about design ops, completely out of owning anything. And I thought it was so great that I made Esa sign it. There's his signature. But that's what you should aim for as an ops function. Like you are successful with change if you can let go. You can let go of what you have sort of, the snowball that you've made to roll. And this is just a summary. I wanted to quickly summarize, can I? Because I gave 3 reasons of why it's about change. First one was that headcounts are not on our side. So what can we do? Well, we can focus on enablement. We can focus on labeling ops mindset, which was the thing that I just skipped. But sort of scaling the idea of how we should work. Also, we're optimizing the ways of working and therefore surface the inefficiency and can be sort of maybe perceived that we are only talking about things that the organization is bad at. What can we do with that? We can let go of the best practice, become more contextual, focus on enablement and building capability and skill, like I mentioned in the last one, and integrating to what's already there instead of coming up with something new. And thirdly, that we want to aim to shift the mindsets. Yeah, this one is hard, but central processes is something that makes also mindset shift mandatory. Think if you could just like change the QBR process or whatever. And then by aiming to let go, to transferring capability and ownership. So what doesn't work is to identify things and scale, and what works is to enable and then integrate to your organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Entertaining as always.
Yeah, I love the feedback. I'm always entertaining, but I hope you learned. Just one thing is enough for me.
Yeah. I definitely learned something new. The enablement part is really interesting.